Hello, fellow plant lovers. This is Wyatt from Excelsa Gardens, and today we're going to talk about canna lilies. To start, let's talk about the different varieties we have here at Excelsa. We like to get our cannas from Israel. They are doing a nice virus-resistant variety in tissue cultures over there. We go the extra mile too to get some very unique varieties in, varieties you probably won't see in most other places. So moving on to canna care. Cannas like full sun, so you want at least 6 hours of full sun plus. That really keeps the flowers coming. That way you won't just have foliage to look at. In a pot, you're going to want to water these every single day. They are, again, very thirsty. If you're planting these in the ground, you can get away with every other day, every 2 days of watering. You just want to make sure you're consistent. They do not like going dry. That will definitely start giving you some burnt edges on your leaves. If you notice your cannas are stop flowering, they're just staying nice and leafy like this, and you have these spent rods, you can do two things now. You're going to get your trusty clippers out. You can do clipping of the stalk right at the first leaf just to take out the spent rods. Or if you wanted to take the stalk out altogether, your spent stalks, you can go all the way down to the bottom and you can take them out altogether. This allows more breathing room for the rest of your shoots that will eventually flower as well. So this guy right next to it, he has extra space to grow in. You'll see this other leaf coming out. He will eventually bloom just like his neighbor here. And you can go ahead and do that with all the spent rods. Even if your leaves, when they're still growing, if they get any spot or browning or if you forget to water, don't be afraid to go in there and clip them all down. You'll notice if you get up and close, you have these little shoots ready to replace the ones you took out. Doing this just resets your plant. If the brown gets real aggressive on your plant, just cut it back like I did and water it again heavily. You can even go the extra mile and add a little fertilizer on the top. Speaking of fertilizers, the best bet for cannas is a slow release fertilizer, something high in nitrogen, usually 14 plus. We'll do a whole video on fertilizers and what fertilizers work well for certain plants in an upcoming video. Utilizing these is fairly easy as long as you stick to those two rules with water and sun. They make an excellent mass planting, so if you want to clump a bunch of these together, they'll really fill in a nice space and give you a nice solid pop of color all throughout the season. If you wanted to do these singular, they do excellent in a pot. I have a few myself. They will get some height. A lot of the cannas do get about 4 feet tall. Your dwarf varieties like this one here, some of these get about 2 to 3 feet tall. It all depends on what you get. Of course, we can steer you in the right direction so if you have any questions. This one here is Tropicana. This is actually a patented variety. We actually pay a royalty for selling these. It's got a nice foliage pattern, so you don't really have to wait for blooms to get color on this particular variety. We have some other ones as well, so be sure to check out our previous video on all of our canna selections here at Excelsa. Another cool one is Cleopatra and Bengal Tiger if you're looking for another foliage-based canna lily. These are really easy to use in the summertime if you're up north. They like a nice sunny spot. Again, just sun and water and you'll have yourself a nice, beautiful canna. If you're in a northern climate, in an area that gets a winter, heavy cold snaps and freezing temperatures, you're going to want to take the cannas and cut them back like we did. You're going to want to do this around fall when you get that first cold snap and when these start browning out and your flowers start dying out. You're going to go back and cut all your cannas at the stalk. You can go ahead and pull them either out of your pot or right out of the ground. They're what's called a rhizome root. which means they have a thick root. It's similar to your iris if you're familiar with those. So you see here, you got your nice root ball. These are just your hairy roots here. These aren't really gonna be necessary for storing these over the winter. So you can go ahead and pull these right off. And you wanna get down to, again, the rhizome, which is a thick root. It's almost like a potato, just not as big and wide. Don't be afraid to really get aggressive with these. They're forgiving. Again, what you're doing here is digging them out of the ground so you can store them in your basement or a dry space in a bag for the winter time. That way next year, in the spring, after the frost passes, you can go ahead and replant these and eventually get a whole new canna again. All right, so this is how you want to get your cannas when you want to pull them out for the season and overwinter them in your basement or in a dry space. When you have them at this point, don't be afraid to go ahead and take a little of that extra green stalk off the top. That'll probably eventually just end up to rot. All the green shoots, just take them off. You're left now with the rhizome. Of course, when you have an older canna, your rhizome will be thicker and fuller. So you're just gonna go ahead, take all the soil off. You can even go ahead and rinse all the excess soil off of this too. And what you wanna do is get some moss, sphagnum moss or peat moss, just plain old moss. Get a brown paper bag and go ahead and just pack these in there. Tie your bag up, put them underneath the staircase in your basement or a nice cool cabinet. And when next spring comes around, after the first frost passes, go ahead and plant these back outside. Full sun, a lot of water, hit them with a good dose of fertilizer, and you'll get your canna just like this in a matter of weeks. It's very fast growing once you get them planted. And that's how you care for a canna. So if you are up north and you want to repot these, and in the springtime after the frost has passed, you need to go ahead, you can start with a small pot or a pot that's going to be, sizable for the root you have. Make sure it's not going to be crowding or pushing against the sides. You want space for it to grow in. So you're gonna go ahead and fill it up about halfway. Nice good soil. Mix your fertilizer in evenly if you want to use a slow release, which is the green little pellets you see here. That's your slow release fertilizer. It's a good amount of nitrogen for it. Go ahead, fill it up halfway, sink your canna in, and then you're gonna go ahead and bury it in the rest of the way. About halfway into the pot's good. You want the really thick rhizome root to be fully covered. Fill it up to the top. Don't be afraid to go ahead and add another few dashes of the fertilizer right on the top layer of soil. And at that point, you're just gonna wanna stick it in an area with full sun and water it until you see the water come out the bottom. Again, you want a well-drained pot, so you want holes in the bottom of that pot. That will do it well. It prevents root rot, and you'll get a nice perky canna lily coming out of there. So at this point, you should start seeing shoots form out of the newly planted canna within 2 to 3 weeks. They're a pretty fast grower. You just gotta be sure to follow the rules for cannas. Full sun and a lot of water. A nice hefty dose of water until you see it flush out the bottom. That will give you a perfect canna lily.